For hardcore zombie fanatics out there, many would say that our modern definition of the term zombie stems from George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, or for even hardcore buffs in cinema, and for one hard rock band in particular, they would even say the 1932 motion picture White Zombie started the term outright. I Am Legend and its film adaptation The Last Man on Earth gave heavy inspiration to what Romero would make in his first movie, and from there, the floodgates burst open with the idea of the zombie. For over half a century, we have seen the zombie archetype evolve, devolve, spun around, turned upside down, and utterly milked to death. Zombies and their living infected counterparts are stereotyped into the genre and can have a wide variety of incarnations, ranging from the generic slow-moving dim-witted cannibals to the fast as hell, less concerned about eating and more about killing bloody psychopaths, to the, let's just say, corniest type that would most likely only scare children and have horror fans loving the cheesiness, but also be pretty damned overpowered in retrospect. But what if we comprised most of them? I was going to say all of them, but I'll probably miss a few and face a nitpicky guy in the comments, but what if we dissected them and put them head to head extensively to determine the subject of today's rather controversial video? Today, we are asking an important question. What is the most dangerous zombie outbreak? Now, there have been hundreds of different incarnations in the zombie category of fiction. In order to assess everything we have laid in front of us and to determine which apocalyptic zombie scenario would prove to be the greatest threat, we will have to look at 4 determining factors that will ultimately decide their ultimate threat level to the healthy majority of the human race. The defining factors in the scoring system. To give a bit of weight to each major zombie scenario, we have to take into account a few things and then give them an overall rating on the danger scale after all is said and done, based on 4 different things: infection, population resilience, durability, and longevity. Then by giving each one a score on a scale of 1 to 10. First, what are the means of the infection or zombie virus's transmission? If possible, where did it originate from? How viral can it get and how fast can it spread? Of course, with most, if not all of every zombie outbreak, the means of transmission is primarily through a bite. And I'm sorry, but you're going to be hearing that term quite a lot. But in some instances, the infection can be spread through bodily fluids, water supply, forceful injection, or even the air we breathe. This will be the utmost determining factor for a zombie outbreak's lethality, since how fast they can spread and increasing their numbers are the tried and true fashion of creating a zombie apocalypse. Second, how will it fare against the general populace as it starts to gain numbers? Will it be too fast for proper military action? Will normal people be able to handle themselves? Let's be completely honest, most of these zombie apocalypses would not be able to expand as far as they did without the veil of a cinematic or thrilling experience or plot armor time skips to stretch over the length of a movie or somehow 9 seasons of a TV show and 2 spin-offs. It's the purpose of this category to analyze their resistance to actual armed intervention and the general readiness of the public. Third, how tough are these zombies? Do they go down with the standard removing the head or destroying the brain? Do they actually need a functioning body or vital organs to survive? What level of strength, agility, and intelligence do they possess in order to withstand human attacks? Some zombie types gain superhuman strength, enhanced forms of smell, and even extreme forms of dexterity. Some may even mutate if the virus resonates with them long enough or if determining factors lie within the body or environment. And last, how long can they last if they do end up overwhelming society? People will still remain in groups and resistances around the world. So over the course of time, will some of these zombies either die of malnourishment, rot into a pile of biomass? Time is the ultimate foe of any living creature, despite how dead they try to project themselves as. Some zombie types still rely on sustenance like food and water to survive, while others eat not as a necessity, but as an instinct. Now I have to put a disclaimer. There are certain franchises, games, movies, and stories I will not be covering, such as reused biomatter to make horrible creatures like Halo's Flood, Dead Space's Necromorphs, or demon-possessed human bodies from Doom, or reusing dead characters with their same capabilities that they had in life, but with an evil sense, like the Whites from Game of Thrones, or Marvel zombies, and so on. We also won't be talking about scenarios where the zombies are friendly from the start, so Warm Bodies, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, and Zombieland Saga won't be factored into this ruling either. The main focus is covering zombie outbreaks that grew to either pandemic level or required a wide quarantine event, so very isolated incidents like dead snow and life force will not be covered. As a whole, we will pit zombies and infected similar to the mindless, flesh-craving violent humans turned insane that stemmed from George A. Romero's general idea of the ghoul or zombie, so I think it would be appropriate to start things off with his style.
Night of the Living Dead.
While the origin of how these original zombies came to life surrounded in theories of crashed satellites carrying microbes from Mars, the basic synopsis was the dead rising from the graves and attacking the living. Carrying over into an expanded universe that welcomed movies like Dawn, Day, Land, Survival, and Diary of the Dead, the undead flesh eaters of Romero's universe all keep a fairly consistent tone. Spreading through merely a bite, these rigor mortis-stricken stiffs lumber forth an attack with what seems like a bit tougher overall strength, able to knock men unconscious against gravestones and break through windows and doors with enough persistence, and even be able to rip men apart with their hands and teeth. The only way of truly putting them down is by removing the head or destroying the brain, meaning any damage to the body beyond those specifications would possibly hinder their movement but not stop its tirade for flesh. They, however, would easily be dispersed if enough men with firepower would band together and gun them down before their numbers increased. Funnily enough, it's hard to believe Romero's universe became so riddled with them, considering at the end of Night of the Living Dead, a roaming band of cops, rednecks, and other armed militias easily took care of any small amassing groups. The sequels did see that the world was overrun, but the zombies basically were so crippled with rigor mortis that they were very restrictive in their movements and thus were very sluggish, making it hard to believe a large population were all bitten. Over time, the real threat comes with numbers, but they will also begin to show signs of intelligence through scientific study or learning for their own, learning to wield weapons, operate firearms, and avoid being distracted by fireworks, and even walking through the bottom of bodies of water. Despite their rigor mortis, their natural decay doesn't seem to debilitate them, even after years roaming about. They can also be shown to surprise survivors with disconnected heads and can retain remnants of knowledge pertaining to their past life. When it comes to Romero's Zambos, while starting it all, a good shot to the dome can disperse Romero's zombies. On the general pandemic event, it would be easy for local armed civilians to quell this outbreak, and even if the world would be taken over, the edge of learning basic tools wouldn't increase their risk level all that much. The danger presented by Romero's zombies would have to be a 3 out of 10. The more definitive version of the zombie for normies who were on the zombie bandwagon of the late 2000s and early 2010s and left after an eye-popping scene handles its deadites relatively differently. They do still carry the sentiment of a bite causing a fatal fever, but more frighteningly so, due to an airborne virus, everyone is infected and will reanimate upon any means of death if the brain remains intact. Meaning, in the chaos of rioting, murder, or just simply death due to natural causes, could create a walker catching people off guard in the initial outbreak. In the first season of the show, they are shown to be fairly fast, but either due to director shifts or realistically speaking rigor mortis, they slow down immensely. The greatest strength is forming in herds and swarming survivors. However, like I said with Romero types, I don't see how the well-armed majority of the North American South was overwhelmed. Being as slow as they are, any militia or armed force could disperse a horde with relative ease. They cannot climb surfaces, cannot figure out rudimentary tasks like opening doors, and can be easily tricked into pitfalls and be herded like cattle. They also rely on smell to discern the difference between the living and dead, but this can also be countered by masking yourself with rotting flesh. While they do in fact die when their brains are destroyed, they can be dismembered to hellish degrees and still live. They somehow possess the strength to rip open people's chest cavities and overpower full-grown adults. Even when decapitated, their heads can still remain alive and be able to bite. Anything that happens to the body does not deter them, but can debilitate them, like when Michonne dismembered her brothers and removed their jaws to make them passive. Considering the timeline for the universe is approaching almost a decade, the walkers, while looking more rotted than ever, still remain their keen sense of strength to overpower individuals, fight with enough force to tear through flesh, and keep being mobile. With that said, Walking Dead's walkers stumble forth with a 4 out of 10.
Dead Rising for the Xbox 360.
Dead Rising zombies are extremely similar in nature to Romero's zombies as well, spreading either through a bite or through genetically modified wasps and gas, making the means of transmission much more viable. Again, with their slow-moving nature, it's hard to see how towns like Fortune City and Los Perdidos became hives of the lumbering buffoons, considering the greater threat of the games were living human psychos. Small towns like Willamette could make sense if their smaller police force may not be able to react accordingly. This is also one of the only outbreaks where a vaccine was created that counteracts the zombification effects with continued doses of Zombrex. These zombies are much more fragile than their usual counterparts. Taking enough bodily damage or suffering enough blood loss can result in their death. They can wield weapons and throw them or swing them, but in a very primitive way. There can be mutated versions that can harbor the disease, spreading wasps, but there are too few in number and only appear years after the zombies have begun cropping up. It's the fact that wasps can spur the outbreak that makes this a slightly more dangerous means of spreading, but beyond that, it's pretty tame in terms of the zombies themselves. Of course, the advent of dusk and night can cause these undead to be more durable, unpredictable, and violent, but still making them a smorgasbord of carnage to plow through. They, like any fully reanimated corpse, have an undescribed longevity to them that allows them to exist without sustenance, and will show physical signs of rot that do not restrict their signs of life over time. To be frank, I'm going to nick this in the bud and chuck the score out. Dead Rising gets a score of 4 out of 10 on the danger scale. Now moving forward, some zombie universes serve as parodies, spin-offs, or cash grabs on Romero's original works. Shaun of the Dead works as a parody, so we won't discuss the aforementioned categories as extensively, but we can still say how tough they are, how you must remove the head or destroy the brain, and their strength in numbers. But it is what happens by the movie's end that shows the reality of this particular undead apocalypse. The British army swoops in and easily dispatches a sizable horde, something that should have happened in every previously mentioned universe. Not only that, but Shaun's mindless antagonists can also be tamed and trained to perform remedial tasks and be normal staples of everyday life. While comical, the danger they present by the end, and if you survive the initial outbreak, slams them down to a mere 2 out of 10.
The Return of the Living Dead.
In the vein of using an established IP comes the undead who only wish to dine on the brains of the living to dull the pain of death. Those found in the Return of the Living Dead series are only spawned by the trioxin virus being exposed to already dead and decaying corpses found in cemeteries or morgues, meaning a finite number of zombies will appear at first, even down to a pure skeleton. Bites can spread the infection, of course. If, however, a living person is exposed to either the pure military-grade gas, their vital functions will eventually cease, and then a hunger for gray matter will rise. If a zombie is cremated and their ashes released into the air, the resulting particles can create somewhat of an acid rain that can harm living people and further awaken the dead in the immediate area, as well as any animal type. Unlike predecessors, these brain-munching fellows are insanely hard to put down, and any body part not completely burned to ashes will still be animated and look to kill. They retain the ability to communicate, can comically set ambushes and traps for the living, and pure gunpowder is not enough to stop them. Even nuking them resulted in the nearby atmosphere being polluted with the trioxin virus, making even more acid rain that would rise the dead and kill more living. So average people and even military would have an extremely hard time fighting back against a threat that is nearly immortal. Although they can seem dull and dumb-witted, they can still solve somewhat complex issues to attain their consumption goals. The Tar Man and even regular zombies had enough force to kill a person just by a quick bite to the surface level of the skull, and it doesn't seem like rot would even be a problem for them as they continue living even down to their bare bones. That's right, even skeletons will be walking around. No matter what we do, Return of the Living Dead's hysterically overpowered army are a definite threat if the trioxin virus were to be released, giving them a 9 out of 10. Some zombie types aren't slow and dumb as the genre likes to dictate. For the remake of Dawn of the Dead made in 2004, it saw to making the undead fast with perfect motor skills and dexterity, and even having a modicum of tacticality. Again, spreading through bites and bodily fluids, the time it takes for people to turn is quite faster than usual. While still dead, these variations are able to reach a full sprint rather quickly. They can only be killed by destruction of the brain, but can be debilitated with shots or damage to certain parts of the body, but can still withstand a reasonable amount of shock. They can climb and stealthily attack survivors while also brooding their way to attack the living. And they can also make zombie babies. Oh god. It doesn't seem like rigor mortis or rot affects the remake's zombies' motor functions and abilities. But then again, long periods of time beyond a few months are not shown, so there is no concrete info to work off of, except for some Blair Witch style shaky camera angles. They do not eat flesh for sustenance, so it stands to say their bodies may eventually fall victim to decay after a year or two. As we cast out to an island far away, their inherent danger lies at about a 7 out of 10. The zombies centralized in a vacation island paradise are pretty reminiscent to the undead of the Dawn of the Dead remake. However, these guys have varying stages of infection and even more varying mutations. Spreading through bites, inoculation, and bodily fluids, those people contracting the HK virus can become infected running at high speeds. Once the infection has ravaged the body, will make them simple walkers akin to generic zombie types. Depending on the person's anatomy and environment, can mutate them into other deadly variations that can vomit, explode, destroy barricades, and more. At first, the HK virus could be a similar threat to Dawn of the Dead, with these fast-moving zombies closing in on unprotected civilians, although the Dead Island infected can be killed with enough damage to any part of the body, not just the head. The special variations are the defining factor, but even then, most can be wiped out with enough weaponized force, considering most special zombies move slowly and would make for great target practice, unless a butcher were to appear looking to dodge gunfire and melee strikes. If the virus were to spread long enough to where a majority of infected become slow-moving and easily defeatable walkers, their threat level would diminish over time. They adapt to flooded environments and do not require oxygen to survive. They won't decay to a pile of body mass and will slowly just wander about for as long as the environment will let them. The danger of Dead Island takes a cozy spot at 5 out of 10. From the same creators of Dead Island, many characteristics from that game are infused into Dying Light. However, bites are still a means of infection, but vaccines can slow this process, much like Dead Rising. Many special varieties of these infected do persist, while night plays an important factor as they hunt for survivors. UV lights can repel them, but learning this and setting up proper safety measures at first would be quite difficult. The wide variety of killer and infectious zombies, or infected, provide enough risk of death and spread of their very own. Yet at the top, the volatiles being an amalgamation of every special infected they have to offer, their durability is insane. If people like Crane are subjected to the Huron virus, we could even experience alpha level volatiles able to whip, spit acid, and disintegrate survivors. Although a majority of these boss zombies like to roam at night to thrive in hives, meaning calculated attacks of these hives during the day could see to wiping them out since they are concentrated in focused areas. These creatures' longevity is at question, considering what may lie ahead with Dying Light 2. But for now, I'll have to put it in the same league as Dead Island and leave them to just infinitely rot until finally put down. You're probably dying to know that Dying Light sheds some light at a danger level of 7 out of 10.
Zombieland.
A typical parody of the typical zombie genre, I paired both of these movies together for how similar their pandemics are, as well as their zombies. Running undead that can administer zombie friendship, although Scout's Guide seems to make them distracted with trying to lure in prey with seduction or with music, which would honestly make them easy to take out, Zombieland makes it seem like they would be too easy to fool and take out as well upon the first year of the outbreak. They can easily take out what they call the fatties and those that do not double tap. But beyond that, always found found it strange how they took out a majority of America so easily. They can last years as normal decay rate is non-existent and can mutate into a variety of different types. That is the Zombieland type, with the T-800 being able to withstand an ungodly amount of bullets to all parts of the body and even being able to dodge gunfire and melee swings. However, they don't seem to have the best sense of self-preservation as they dive off buildings, especially with the Homer types. Honestly, between Zombieland and Scout's Guide, I did say they're pretty similar, and with the mutations in Zombieland, I'm gonna have to put both of them around a 6 out of 10. Sadly, I'll be discussing the movie, not the book. But as it is, and ever will be, transmission is through teeth sinking into your skin. But the time to turn is insanely quick, giving a person only seconds before they become convulsive, erratic, and start leaping and sprinting as a biter. Their greatest threat beyond their infection time is their insane speed, and more so their ability to cluster together in order to almost be tsunami-like, climbing over each other at high speeds to plow through defenses and ascend any wall or surface to reach their prey. However, a great flaw is the fact that humans currently sick with deadly or even severe diseases are avoided by the biters. I would say signs of countermeasure to this outbreak would be discovered rather quickly by hospitals, those in hospice care, or any chemo treatment centers. Besides that, with how fast it can transform people, it's easy to see how human resistance would fall so quickly. Despite their large numbers, individually they can be taken out with firepower easily, as long as you don't shoot yourself. Their greatest danger is always going to be close proximity. They are not very durable, and enough damage to the body will take them out. As for longevity, they have a greatly reduced rate of decomposition and could very well remain on Earth for years to come. I will not be considering the game, so don't be at me in the comments with that. World War Z gets a 7 out of 10. Spreading through any mammal, Train to Busan's virus originally spread through what seems to be a chemical leak. Very akin to the cinematic version of World War Z, the disease can spread very rapidly depending on the part of the body the victim was bitten or even scratched. And similar to World War Z, they are fast, willing to go full sprint, leap towards prey without regard for their own safety, and will create bushels amongst themselves so that a few may reach a healthy host. The zombies in this universe rely completely on light to spot people, and when either their vision is blocked or in a dark area, can have a hard time moving around and figuring out where to go. They will dogpile on any source of sound made, no matter how insignificant it may be. They are still presumably alive, and bodily harm can take its toll on them if vital portions are destroyed. As for their longevity, until the sequel to Train to Busan comes out, we can't really say how long these particular zombies would last. With that being said, it comes in at 7 out of 10. Its origins have been speculated to have been spread through infected crops from South America, meaning fungal molds on exports like coffee and cacao have been unknowingly consumed by thousands before recalls were made. From there, those harboring the cordyceps brain infection would of course go through the chomps, while also being able to spread through airborne spores and invading the respiratory system of a human, but requiring them to be alive in order to infect them. Due to this transmission style, 60% of humanity fell victim to the cordyceps in just a few months, severely limiting how armed response could handle this outbreak, as it would be hard to discern who was a fungal Freddy or not. Cities would fall rather fast at this rate. Depending how long the fungus has remained in a parasitic relationship with its host will depend on how strong they will be, as well as their site. Stage 1 will be a 28 days later-esque infected, attacking in a rage-like fashion. Stage 2 and 3 will start to have fungal scarring on their face, which will make them click constantly to use echolocation to find prey. They become much more durable and deadly as the days, weeks, and even years go on. Now, with many apocalyptic zombie scenarios, the hordes will either die out or just remain the same. But here, they can become plated in plated fungal armor, being almost unkillable by individual human beings. If infected do die, their bodies will degrade and release spores to infect healthy hosts through the air. So for once, longevity actually suits a pandemic well instead of acting as a detriment, making their durability much more withstanding as well. With that said, humans won't be lasting long if it is allowed to remain. The initial outbreak is deadly as hell, but trying to survive years into the apocalypse will be even worse, where only fire could truly wipe out this threat in the grand scheme. This time, we're giving The Last of Us a 9 out of 10. Call of Duty Zombies! zombies, brother, yeah! The origins, however convoluted and crazy its multiverse and how it can be controlled it may seem, it does have horrific potential. Element 115, not 115 because you guys bitched at me in my Call of Duty video, will be able to reanimate the dead, but also give one the ability to control them all as well. For once, a bite does not spread the infection, instead relying on their numbers to outright kill people and animals, then using their corpses to enlist more to their undead army. Normal people would not last against the hellscape they create, as Element 115 also alters the world in its favor, allowing the zombies to emerge from the ground, charging certain zombies with elemental capabilities, and even spawning hellhounds at will. If a tactical genius were to apprehend the power of the Focuser Stone, they could easily systematically wipe out humanity little by little as the dead outnumber the living, unless we sent a crackshot team to the moon to take out the leader. The longer the zombies persist, the more durable they become. And with how many time jumps occur in the story, it seems longevity is out the window with the worldwide horde, as they will not corrode to death. I really hate to say it, I really do, since I hate Call of Duty Zombies, but with the fact that some zombies, like the director, being near godlike, and also with the power of the Focusing Stone being in the wrong hands, or you could say right hands, could give someone the ability to control the world's zombie population at their whim, leading to coordinated strikes with endless hordes, could make this nigh impossible to survive. They are so durable that even headshots aren't always going to be effective, giving this franchise a 10 out of 10 on the danger scale. Now this one you're probably waiting on 28 days and weeks later. The spread of the Rage virus being the result of testing of violent media and exposure to lab monkeys. Any molecule or blood or saliva that enters the body of a healthy living host, no matter what animal it may be, will almost immediately trigger instant results. People entering a blind rage, attacking anyone not like them, vomiting blood, attacking without restraint, where a bite or even a small scratch can mean imminent contamination. Unlike many zombie outbreaks, the sheer means of transmission is deadly enough to spread through a populace wildly if left unchecked. Running without any signs of fatigue will be troublesome. Fighting back would be easy with the right weaponry, but having the extra caution of killing them but having their blood splatter into an orifice of yours, possibly getting in water supplies, or just having crows dripping blood from above could even have battle-hardened individuals turning without warning. They, however, are still living human beings. Enough harm to the framework to the infected can put them down. However, pain will not hinder their pursuit, so kill shots to the head, heart, or other vital organs are necessary. As seen by the end of 28 days later, even just a month and a half after the initial outbreak leads to their inevitable doom. Malnourishment, dehydration, and fatigue can easily set in and run their course through their bodies, rendering them immobile and eventually dying out. Meaning surviving through the general populace's majority infection would be the most critical period before they become skin and bones scraping by on the streets and countryside. 28 days later, we figured out its danger level is a 6 out of 10. You knew I was going to cover this one. Inspired by the infected of 28 days later, the infected of Left 4 Dead start off in a very similar fashion, although the initial spread of the green flu virus was supposedly airborne at first, while being transmitted through bodily fluids and bites throughout. This alone would be a drastic factor into how many people would become infected, with only the immune, carriers, and random pockets of people and army personnel outlasting the disease in the air, with boomers vomiting and exploding about, also spreading the affliction too. The common infected, typically traveling in hordes outside of scattered pockets, sound will draw them, and if not properly equipped, can flood any compound easily, especially with specials that can ascend buildings in wide leaps and can pull those in high places off ledges into swarming infected. They can withstand a bit of damage, special variants having a differing threshold for what they can take. Tanks being able to withstand unholy amounts of gunfire, blasts, and sustained fire give it a bit more durability to the horde, while witches are capable of slashing open survivors in one swing. Much like 28 days later, green flu recipients are still human, however drastically mutated their bodies may be, and due to these transformations, their lifespans have significantly decreased and will wear down their body more than any other, on top of not eating, drinking, or sleeping, which will also exacerbate this process. All in all, with how things start off being airborne into a hastily created infection rate with powerful infected, things aren't looking good, as you'll probably be Left 4 Dead. Oh, and 4 out of 10. Just kidding, that was a pun. This gets a 9 out of 10. DayZ and 7 Days to Die. had to put them together because they're basically just run-of-the-mill zombies, same shit, different game, but with either Battle Royale or Minecraft mechanics. It's basic as hell and not going to explain much beyond slow-moving and sometimes fast-moving zombies that you have to defend against. It's pretty generic. 3 out of 10. Originating as a research subject that broke out, black fever was supposedly a pathogen that evades and takes control of the brain of a host, spreading through consistent teeth penetration and the noxious gas of bloaters. The pathogen can also mutate to create a disease called blood plague, which is a more severe form of the black fever, turning your skin inside out and whatnot. While it can be checked by repurposing the tissue of infected, it is quite brutal and quick to kill if left unchecked. 18 months in, it also seems that dying for any reason can result in reanimation without a bite. Proper armament and fortification could see to outlasting the common freak, but special variants like the Juggernaut could make things a bit more difficult. Freaks can only be killed via destruction of the brain, although taking out plague hearts at their source also have a dead rising wasp effect and will instantly kill nearby blood plague infected freaks. Their durability is dependent on your aim, and if you can pull off a headshot other than that, their bodies can withstand a lot, and it doesn't seem like aging or relying on the blood plague to wear down their bodies will do the trick. With how vicious this outbreak's disease is, even though it could be counteracted pretty easily, any run-of-the-mill person can create a vaccine on top of a growing freak population, I would say State of Decay lies barely at 7 out of 10. On the topic of freakers, let's go out with the freaker virus. Writing on in, this strain was able to be spread by an ignorant intern who wanted to spread the news of a pathogen that could be deadly, and during his travels contracted the disease and spread it further. Whatever he touched, peed on, sneezed on, or breathed on was free game, and anyone else that came in contact was now harboring the disease that would eventually secretly but violently mutate within millions of people to show rabies-like symptoms, killing anyone with lowered immune systems, the elderly, and even the very young, while mutating others further. The general public would have a hard time fighting back, as many would have already fallen victim to the freaker virus, or the freakers themselves, as they would pull a World War Z and come at survivors like a damn wave of piranhas. Their durability is pretty much the same as any regular infected, meaning enough damage anywhere to the body can put them down, even for the big boys of their ranks. However, unlike typical infected, they will seek out food and water to survive, even by eating the non-infected alive, giving these living infected a higher life expectancy as they roam rural America. With all this being said, Days Gone, with its initial infection and the horde's persistence, Days Gone gon' get a score of 8 out of 10. I really didn't want to do this, but it was a recent zombie movie. Toxic lunar rays reviving the already decaying corpses found in morgues and cemeteries. These social commentary-esque zombies will stumble around muttering whatever they craved most in life. A chomp from them will of course mean a switching of teams to the zombie side. Considering their slow demeanor and idiotic display, there's really no reason the entire world should have fallen to this brand of an undead uprising. Kylo Ren and Bill Murray had an easy time taking them out casually, but due to a script that forced them to say things will end badly, they were written to die. These zombies are fragile, and of course brain damage is the course of action, with any destruction of the body resulting in pure ash pluming from their carcasses. It does seem like due to their complete anatomy being a veritable dark magic making them mummy-like, there would be no end to them without being killed one by one, but their pursuits in describing their affinities and being obsessed with them would make them easy to disperse, as they are slow as hell. The dead don't die, don't do too well, and stand at a 2 out of 10. Bites, scratches, and bodily fluids, oh my. This franchise is basically if The Walking Dead allowed the walkers to be able to run while also infecting animals and mutating. The ZN1 virus being transmissible through bites and or scratches while also making it where dying, no matter what the cause, can have someone turn into a zombie. The rate of transformation can be a bit finicky, as even a girl puking while standing up had her turned in seconds flat. While it seems like a majority of the populace is gone, teens and children are easily able to survive with their wit fit while adults continue to be stupid. I don't know, it's just what's going on. Head trauma is the only way of killing them, on top of an unlimited endurance and stamina. They can be mutated into varying types like radioactive, Phytos, which is a plant hybrid, Madzes with more durability, and Talkers. They can be quite hard to kill, as headshotting hordes may be harder than it seems. They can last indefinitely as long as their brains are intact, but it seems like vaccines can delay or stop the infection and even have some people look like zombies but still function as normal human beings, but still carrying the virus. While it does mutate over time, it seems humanity is able to come to grips with this epidemic and withstand it a bit more. This one stands out at a 6 out of 10.
Resident Evil.
And the last one on the list. You thought I forgot this one, huh? But the various forms of the G&T virus and whatever else can be out there can transmit through local water supplies, or you can forcefully inject parasites into people's bodies. Either way, it's infecting thousands overnight. And then, in another rabies-like fit, having people ravage each other, infecting through bites, blood, scratches, and so much more. Various animals can also be infected and grow exponentially in size, like spiders and rats. Even the normal types of zombies manage to survive even shots to the head numerous times before going down, despite how slow some of them may be, and even mutant forms like the Licker or militarized mutants like Mr. X or the Nemesis could seek out and wipe out those 10% of the population immune to both viruses. The origin of the virus being a leech that can also recall all dead matter nearby to create a blob, tentacle hentai-like being able to crush anyone that is not armed with military-grade explosives. In future installments and movies, even those infected and possessed by whatever it has become can literally not die and just become a creature of tar that requires a lot of fire. Further sequels would make things even worse, as parasites are forcefully ingested and make hordes of obeying undead. Things get really out of hand with just how actiony it gets, giving them an unlimited longevity and nearly impossible durability unless you're an action star. And I doubt we have people like the protagonists in Biohazard, Resident Evil, to prevent a real-life occurrence. So, Resident Evil gets a 10 out of 10. Well, that's a majority of the major zombie outbreaks in popular culture. And like I said, I probably omitted something or missed out. So feel free to berate me down below, talk about what others should have been included, and maybe I might change my mind about what I have said. But right now, with all that being said and done, looking in review of all that we have laid out, it's without a doubt to say that this particular outbreak is the deadliest zombie apocalypse. Can I get a drum roll, please? Paper out here. Let's see here. Well, it looks like it's Minecraft! Hell, just kidding. It's Fortnite Save the World mode. Wait a minute. No, that's not right. Shit. Oh, yeah. It's a tie between Call of Duty and Resident Evil. Call of Duty Zombies mode has literally the dead population of the world working as one to wipe out survivors, and with Element 115 making a literal game of it, things would be much easier if the controller of this power just outright did them in, especially with the immortal godlike zombies it could create. Same thing can be said for Resident Evil, with how over the top it is, making invincibility seem possible, and it never seems to go down no matter how many times protagonists can try. The second place contenders being Left 4 Dead, Return of the Living Dead, and The Last of Us, all including an impossible initial infection rate being consumable or airborne, powerful infected that are too hard to avoid, or literal nukes being unable to destroy their threat as they plot your death in a comedic fashion.